We both were married. When we both met, we were separated. I wasn't with my husband for a year and a half.
I was separated from my wife and I moved into a townhouse.
Mr. Asinato owes you $15,000. There's no reason to pay any money for a child that you know is not yours, and claim to have bombshell evidence to prove that you're not the father.
She's basically roped me into signing a birth certificate for a child that she told me that was mine.
But you said you signed the birth certificate.
I did sign the birth certificate. She made me believe that the child was mine by saying that she was only with me.
You did sleep with her?
I did, yes, ma'am.
And my ex-husband and I were going through issues and we're separating. And
so you began a sexual relationship?
Correct. That was in 2007. My son was born in 2011.
Oh, 4 years.
Exactly.
In Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, every word, every tear, and every piece of evidence becomes part of a larger journey toward truth. This case unfolds with an emotional intensity that reflects how deeply paternity questions can shake families, relationships, and personal identities. People often don't realize how a DNA test, something they thought would bring clarity, can instead bring regret, reflection, and redirection. And in this courtroom, the truth does not whisper. It changes everything. From the moment this case begins, Judge Lauren Lake addresses the emotional weight carried by both sides. She sees two people who have lived years intertwined with suspicion, loyalty, betrayal, hope, and fear. The mother arrives determined to prove her child's paternity, while the man stands firm in his belief that he has been misled and wrongfully burdened with Supreme Court child support obligations for a child he believes is not biologically his. The tension between them mirrors the themes often discussed in the Truth Changes Everything podcast, where emotional truths collide with legal consequences. Both parties present themselves with heavy hearts. The mother brings forward a story of long-term connection, shared history, and the responsibilities of raising a child with health challenges. She speaks with certainty and insists that the father has abandoned emotional and financial support. For her, this courtroom represents a final chance to anchor the truth and secure stability for her child. She explains the medical difficulties her child has faced and connects them to the man's Italian background, pointing to inherited traits and genetic markers that she believes confirm paternity. On the other side, the man argues that he has spent years fulfilling obligations he now believes were based on deception. His frustration reflects the kinds of emotional testimonies often heard in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where people admit that they sometimes carry burdens they never deserved. He insists that he was tricked into signing the birth certificate, and that this act positioned him legally as the father even before he could question the biological truth. Judge Lauren Lake immediately acknowledges the legal complexity, reminding him that once a man signs a birth certificate, the law recognizes him as the legal father, regardless of biology. Inside the courtroom, both sides refer to memories of past relationships, breakups, reconciliations, and unresolved trust issues. Their conflicting testimonies highlight the fragile relationship between law and justice, a topic often explored in the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, where legal realities collide with human stories. The law provides structure, but justice requires truth. And the truth is exactly what Judge Lauren Lake is determined to uncover. As the mother talks, she insists she never misled him. Her narrative paints a picture of an on-and-off relationship that may have been imperfect but was genuine. She explains that the only other man she was with had been involved months before conception. She claims that the timing eliminates any biological possibility. Her voice emphasizes that her child deserves stability, honesty, and recognition. The man disagrees strongly. He recounts moments when doubts began to grow, changes in behavior, communications with other men, unexplained absences, and a lack of transparency that, according to him, created an unbreakable cloud of suspicion. These emotionally charged disagreements resemble the patterns often described in DNA test cheating stories, where partners recall how mistrust spreads until the entire relationship collapses under its weight. He argues that he never refused responsibility. He only refused deception. He believes he deserves the same clarity the legal system demands from him. In the midst of this emotional turbulence, Judge Lauren Lake maintains steady guidance. She reminds both parties that paternity cases are not about punishing mistakes, but about uncovering the truth for the sake of the child. She references principles similar to those found in the concept of justice in jurisprudence, where fairness requires evidence, not assumptions. The courtroom listens as she carefully breaks down legal responsibilities, the impact of signing a birth certificate, and the limits of personal claims when weighed against documented law. The mother insists the father has chosen the wrong moments to doubt her. According to her, he believes he is the father whenever the relationship is stable, yet denies paternity whenever the two argue. This pattern, she states, is fueled by emotional immaturity, not biological doubt. She states that she has struggled to raise a child with special needs, and his inconsistency hurts them both. Her voice resembles the emotional clarity heard in the Divorce Course podcast, where individuals reflect on the difficulty of navigating relationships marred by insecurity and unresolved trauma. The man responds with his own emotional truth. He feels he has been manipulated, financially drained, and emotionally exhausted. He claims that he has spent thousands, money he never would have withheld had he been sure the child was his. He explains how he has lived with doubt for years, and that this uncertainty has influenced every decision he has made regarding the child. Despite showing care and affection for the boy, he feels the mother's inconsistencies have sabotaged their ability to co-parent peacefully. His claims echo the legal principle of adverse inference in Evidence Act, where withholding information can be interpreted as proof of wrongdoing. Judge Lauren Lake listens to both testimonies with firm patience. Her courtroom is known for its balance between legal rigor and emotional understanding. She reminds both parties that assumptions, text messages, and questionable memories do not equal evidence. DNA is the ultimate witness. These are the kinds of emotional battles often dissected in the Truth Changes Everything podcast, where one pivotal fact reshapes an entire reality. As arguments continue, the courtroom hears details about their shared past, years of living together, separating, reconciling, the birth of the child, medical challenges, financial strain, and emotional disconnect. Each detail deepens the complexity of their situation. The mother describes the father's moments of affection and involvement, emphasizing that he has shown love for the child and has been recognized by the boy as his father. The man admits to emotional attachment, but insists that biology still matters, especially if future medical needs ever arise. Their words echo stories similar to those shared in Adoption Stories full episodes, where biological connection might be absent but emotional connection remains deeply significant. Yet the man believes biology determines certain legal responsibilities that must not be placed on someone without certainty. Judge Lauren Lake sums up the situation. The child is caught in the crossfire. The courtroom is not here to judge the parents' relationship or personal choices. It is here to uncover biological truth so the child can be protected, legally and emotionally. The descriptions of instability, conflict, doubt, hope, and emotional distress reflect the dynamics often present in evidence stage in divorce case discussions, where broken trust turns into long legal battles. As the judge prepares to reveal the results, the tension becomes almost tangible. The mother holds onto belief. The man braces for confirmation or correction. The judge carefully explains the power and finality of a DNA test, a tool that provides answers even when humans cannot. The courtroom quiets down. The language becomes slow and deliberate. Each word matters as Judge Lauren Lake reminds them that DNA does not lie. The decision will change their lives, clarify responsibilities, and reshape their emotional truths. The stage is set for the moment that will define everything. The moment before the DNA results are revealed carries a quiet heaviness that fills the entire courtroom. Judge Lauren Lake pauses, allowing both parties to breathe, knowing that this single moment will separate years of confusion from the clarity they desperately need. She understands that this is the type of moment often discussed in the Truth Changes Everything podcast, where a single revelation is powerful enough to dissolve old narratives, expose hidden pain, and force people to confront reality without filters. Before opening the envelope, Judge Lauren Lake revisits the legal implications that brought the couple here. She reminds them that the law acknowledges the act of signing a birth certificate as a binding decision. She explains how the man, by signing, became the legal father in the eyes of the state and became responsible for Supreme Court child support obligations. Her tone is calm but firm. This is not merely an emotional conflict, but a legal structure designed to protect the child. She emphasizes that legal fatherhood and biological fatherhood are not always the same, a principle widely examined in the Game Changing Attorney podcast, especially when discussing the distinction between moral responsibility and statutory duty. Yet today, this courtroom seeks to align both. Judge Lauren Lake's explanation exposes the delicate relationship between law and justice. Law requires documents, timelines, and signatures, but justice requires truth, compassion, context, and accountability. And today, both sides of that relationship converge in the DNA envelope resting in her hands. The mother's expression shows confidence, but also fear. Fear that even if the result confirms her claim, their fractured relationship may never heal. Fear that the man may continue to emotionally detach from the child if lingering resentment isn't addressed. She repeats that she has nothing to hide and that she has always believed in his paternity. For her, this test is simply a formal confirmation of something she has known in her heart since the beginning. The man, however, carries a different emotion, one shaped by years of doubt, financial strain, and broken trust. His body language reveals a man who has been mentally fighting the same battle again and again. He thinks about the years he contributed financially, the emotional conflict he felt when the child called him daddy, and the hurt he felt each time his doubt resurfaced. His struggle resembles the emotional themes in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where people talk about the guilt and confusion that come from living with unresolved trauma. He wants the truth, but he fears what the truth will ask of him next. Judge Lauren Lake acknowledges both sides with her signature compassion. She reiterates that this courtroom doesn't judge past choices. It reveals truth so that healing can finally begin. Her explanation reflects the deeper concept of justice in jurisprudence, where truth must be established before responsibility, healing, or forgiveness can be attempted. She makes it clear that the DNA test is not designed to punish either parent. It is designed to secure a foundation of truth for the child. The mother begins explaining once more how their relationship, though chaotic, was real. She insists they were together consistently, and that she was not involved with anyone else at the time of conception. She repeats the timeline with clarity, stating that the man she briefly saw was long before her pregnancy. Her voice cracks when she describes the emotional damage caused by repeated accusations and the sense of humiliation she felt being questioned again and again. The man responds with equal passion. He explains how the inconsistencies in their relationship fostered doubt. He reminds the room that suspicion doesn't always come from malice. It often comes from insecurity, past experiences, or deep emotional wounds. These types of emotional triggers are often discussed in the Divorce Course podcast, where unresolved trust issues can slowly dismantle a family. He believed he deserved transparency and consistency, not confusion and mixed signals. Judge Lauren Lake steps in again, this time reminding them of the larger picture, the child. She emphasizes that the child deserves stability, not years of tension. The judge's words carry the authority of legal reasoning and the warmth of someone who understands human pain. She mentions how DNA testing has changed the landscape of family law, giving families clarity that past generations never had. But she also warns that some people regret taking a DNA test, not because the truth is wrong, but because the truth forces change. And change can be painful. Still, change is necessary. She addresses the man's statement about medical concerns. He said he only wanted to know the truth so that if the child ever needed genetic-specific medical support, the family would know where to turn. Judge Lauren Lake acknowledges this as a legitimate concern rooted not in rejection, but in responsibility. She reminds him that paternity is more than DNA. It involves emotional presence, financial support, and moral guidance. These values echo the lessons often explored in adoption stories' full episodes, where families learn that biology may determine genetics, but love determines belonging. As the discussion continues, Judge Lauren Lake explains another important point. Doubt can be poisonous. It can destroy relationships, distort memories, and weaken the bond between a parent and child. She explains that the law provides guidelines, not emotional solutions. Emotional healing requires truth, honesty, and maturity. She references how DNA results often reveal hidden burdens in families, sparking transformations similar to those discussed in DNA test cheating stories, where long-hidden secrets suddenly become undeniable. She then turns to the mother, asking about the child's emotional needs. The mother describes how the child recognizes the man as his father, how he looks for him, how he cries when they are apart, and how deeply he longs for stability. She explains that the child identifies him as his protector and source of comfort. This, she says, is why this battle over paternity is not merely a legal matter. It is a matter of a child's emotional survival. The man listens, visibly affected. He admits that he loves the child deeply, but he cannot ignore the doubts that have overshadowed his love. He explains that loving the child while doubting his paternity created constant internal conflict. This emotional struggle mirrors the tone of stories heard in evidence stage and divorce case discussions, where parents feel torn between personal pain and parental duty. Judge Lauren Lake highlights how doubt can distort even genuine affection. She reminds him that a child cannot distinguish between financial provision and emotional presence. They only know who shows up. She explains that while adults argue about law, biology, and responsibility, the child simply sees someone he trusts. The mother breaks down as she describes how the child waits by the window for the man, believing he will return soon. Her words echo the emotional fragility of children caught in these cases. She reminds the man of the small, everyday routines they built, bedtime, meals, playful moments, that shape the child's sense of normalcy. Her voice trembles as she declares that regardless of the DNA results, she never wanted her child to feel unwanted. Judge Lauren Lake acknowledges this emotional truth. She explains that while the law can name a biological father, it takes a committed heart to become a real father. She mentions that courts across the world deal with cases like this, where DNA reveals one truth and emotional bonds reveal another. She highlights how legal systems sometimes separate biological and legal fathers, and how this difference is often debated in family law contexts, similar to topics discussed in the Game-Changing Attorney podcast. As she prepares to open the envelope, the courtroom grows silent. She reminds both parties that DNA has no emotion. It simply reveals biological fact. The envelope contains the truth that will either reinforce or reshape everything they believe. She warns them that once the truth is spoken aloud, they must respond not as two angry adults, but as parents responsible for a child's future. This moment also highlights the legal principle of adverse inference in Evidence Act, where missing, unclear, or conflicting information can hurt a party's credibility. She explains that the DNA test eliminates inference. It provides clarity that leaves no room for doubt, assumption, or speculation. Both parties brace themselves. The mother holds onto belief, praying that the results confirm her truth. The man prepares for either outcome, knowing that his emotional future and legal responsibilities depend on what happens next. Judge Lauren Lake slowly opens the envelope. Every eye in the courtroom focuses on her. She draws out the document with deliberate calm, embodying the professionalism of a judge who has delivered thousands of life-changing verdicts. The courtroom breathes in unison. Judge Lauren Lake looks down at the DNA results with the seriousness of someone who understands how many lives hinge on the truth written in a single line. The courtroom is silent. The mother's breath trembles. The man's hands grip the podium, bracing himself for impact. In this moment, What the Truth Changes Everything podcast talks about becomes real. Truth does not arrive softly. It enters like a force that shifts the ground beneath everyone involved. Judge Lauren Lake begins reading the findings. Her voice is steady, controlled, and deeply respectful, as though she is guiding them through something sacred. She explains that these results were prepared by DNA diagnostics, a scientific conclusion, free of emotion, bias, or assumption. A conclusion that neither party can change, manipulate, or reinterpret. A conclusion that will settle the years of doubt, conflict, and heartbreak that have consumed this family. The mother closes her eyes in anticipation. She believes she already knows the truth, but she fears the emotional impact of hearing it spoken aloud. The man, however, watches intently. His eyes reflect the years he has spent questioning his role and the emotional exhaustion that accompanies living in uncertainty. This, for him, is the resolution he has waited for. Judge Lauren Lake reads the result. And just like that, everything changes. Her voice reveals the truth. He is not the biological father. The courtroom gasps, not loudly, but enough to echo the shock. The mother's hands tremble as she tries to make sense of what she just heard. She insists she never believed there was any other possibility, that the timeline eliminated any doubt. She repeats again that the only other man she was with had been too long before conception to matter. Her tears reflect disbelief, confusion, and emotional devastation. The man exhales, somewhere between relief and heartbreak. He did not want to walk away from the child he has loved, but he needed the truth to stop living in emotional limbo. The result gives him clarity, but clarity does not always feel like victory. His expression shows that, despite the outcome, he is still deeply affected by the idea of stepping away from the child. This emotional conflict resembles the painful stories often shared in adoption stories' full episodes, where individuals struggle with the divide between biology and attachment. Judge Lauren Lake doesn't allow judgment or blame to flood the room. Instead, she controls the emotional chaos with calm authority. She explains to the mother that DNA is not influenced by memory, emotion, or belief. It is a scientific truth that overrules timelines and personal interpretations. She clarifies that the result does not mean the mother intentionally misled him, but it does mean the biological path is different from what she believed. The judge tells her that understanding this truth is the first step toward giving the child the identity and medical clarity he deserves. Then she turns to the man, acknowledging the emotional weight he carries. She recognizes that he has spent years fulfilling responsibilities, paying Supreme Court child support, loving the child, and showing up in moments when many men might have walked away. She acknowledges that while biology may not bind him to the child, his actions reflect a level of commitment many biological fathers never show. But the judge also addresses the legal realities. Signing the birth certificate made him the legal father. However, the DNA result now gives him the right to pursue legal adjustment. She explains that depending on the jurisdiction and timeline, he may have the option to request removal from the birth certificate, adjust child support, or pursue legal remedies. These legal pathways reflect principles often examined in the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, where law must adapt to truth, fairness, and changing circumstances. But Judge Lauren Lake also highlights something deeper: emotional responsibility. She tells him that the child's view of him as daddy will not change just because the DNA says otherwise. Children do not understand legal distinctions. They know love, presence, and connection. She explains that while he has every legal right to step back, he must decide for himself what role he wants to play moving forward. This echoes the relationship between law and justice. Sometimes the law allows one thing, while justice calls for something more human. The mother breaks down, unable to understand how the result is possible. She insists that she was not lying, that she was never with anyone else at the time. Her confusion is genuine. Judge Lauren Lake acknowledges her pain, reminding her that emotional certainty does not always align with biological truth.